Hi, I'd like to take a few minutes of your time to discuss the training method that I use. As probably most of you know, there are a number of falconers out there today who feel as though the best way to go when they train a passage hawk, be it a Cooper's or any other passage hawk, is to do it from the dark, kind of like similar to days of old when they used trained by candlelight. Except now it's training by strobe light and it's complete darkness. And as best I understand it, they introduced in the darkness. They introduced using the strobe light. They introduced the hawk to the hood, as well as getting them to eat and all of that. And there has been they've had success at doing it. And that's good. I think anyone that wants to, go that route, that's fine. As I've said a number of times, as it pertains to this topic, to each their own. The premise behind this approach, again, as best as I understand it, is that it precludes trauma. It precludes traumatizing the bird. Now, trauma is a strong word, and I think if you look it up in the dictionary, you'll agree with me, because it really refers to serious injury, either physically or mentally, that has prolonged implications, nothing temporary. And of course, that's not the case with the way a number of us, including myself, training birds, because if that were the case, we could get them going in a couple of weeks. So it just wouldn't happen. It would take months. And so I think trauma is just the wrong word. Fear has been another one that has been used. Eliminates fear. And I'm not real sure that a bird, a passage hawk, really is fearful, even though that's how we interpret it. When the hawk kind of opens its mouth and has its wings out, and its hackle feathers up, and tail feather out. I don't know if that's a fear. And the reason why I say that is because I've had two birds that were absolutely categorically fearful. One was a passage fearful Harris's hawk, and the other was a passage Cooper's hawk. And they both reacted the same way. And you've heard of the term, I should say, frozen in fear, and that's pretty much defines them. They would hang there off my fist and just hang there. And they would bring in their feathers, instead of their feathers being out and, demonstrating some sort of bravado, they would have them slicked into their body. Everything tucked in, and they would be chirping. They had a certain chirping sound. Maybe some of you have heard it before. But it was just the exact opposite of what we experience with passage hawks, or at least, I would imagine 99.9% of the passage hawks that we train. And as I say, it was just pure, unadulterated fear. There was no doubt about that. So I'm not sure that fear is the right word either. I'm not convinced of that at this point, anyway. Now, is it stressful? And yes, it is stressful. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It's a question of, how much stress. And of course, I guess that's dependent on the person answering the question, because some folks might feel that any stress is too much. So in that case, I guess that's the answer. But for others, such as myself, I ask the question, is the stress that they experience using this method harmful? And I can tell you, based upon my experience, training a lot of passage hawks, that I have only had one hawk that died. One hawk that died, actually I had two hawks that died. I had a goshawk that died, but that was well beyond training, and it died of asthma. So I had two hawks, but the other one, definitely, I would say it died during training, and I would say that the training did in fact contribute to its demise, for sure. But I I took this bird up to have a necropsy done because I was curious as to why this happened, since it hadn't happened before. And they did the necropsy, and they discovered that it had asper, and it was loaded with cocci, and there was something else, some other malady that I don't recall right now. But it was a disaster waiting to happen, basically. So in a case like that, I believe that in the dead of winter, this bird, Mother Nature would have selected, would have selected against that particular bird, so I don't feel badly about that, frankly. Now, having said that, one of the authors in the book I edited called The Passage, Cooper's Hawk and Nosy Flyer, said that with all his passage hawks, be them Coopers or not, after a certain period of time, preliminary, very short period of time of manning the hawk, he takes it to a vet and has it checked out to see if it's healthy enough to continue on and have the weight taken out and all that sort of stuff. And I think that's a good idea. So if you feel a need to do that, and you want to take it to the vet, they can do throat cultures and draw blood, and they can, of course, check the mutes and give it a clean bill of health. Personally, and I'm speaking for myself now, I have not. It's never been a problem. It has not been problematic enough for me to justify. It really hasn't, because as I say, there's been lots of passage hawks involved, and they've all come through nicely, the training nicely, and whatnot. So, but that's just my feelings on it. But I did want to share that with you. The other thing I want to talk about just briefly is hooding. Again, some folks feel it as necessary to start off in the dark and introduce the hood that way, and then gradually make their way into the light, and that's good. Now, I obviously don't do that. I just hood the bird, and I have to say that I absolutely have to say that that's probably the hardest part for the bird when it comes to this training. because you know you're putting something over its head that where it can't see, and that must be hard to accept. And then this hand is coming at them, and that probably makes it even more difficult. So, you know, I'll be the first to admit that that it is, as I say, it's probably difficult for them to accept. And let's face it, they have to kind of resign themselves to the hood. It's not like they're getting, you know, reinforced for letting you put the hood on, coming to the fist for food. So, although I did see a video, maybe some of you have seen it, a gentleman who hood trained a captive bred falcon that was hood shy, and he did it through giving the bird copious amounts of food. But with a passage hawk, it's a bit different because you know, you don't want to be feeding them, and they're not initially willing to eat, and you want to get the hooding going right away. And you know, you're trying to get weight out of them. So I don't know if that would work. But again, you know, while it may be more stressful, I don't know than what other folks do in terms of hood training, it doesn't stress them enough to be harmful. Yeah, at least as based upon my experience, it just doesn't. So I just continue to do it, and it gets it out of the way, you know, right away when they're more receptive to hood training, and it doesn't take too long, and they're, you know, and they have resigned themselves to it. I don't know that they ever perfectly accept the hood, but at least they'll stand there and be hooded. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of, you know, share with you my thoughts on these topics. Thank you.